The law is sacred. If you abuse that power, people get hurt. This is not a game.
There were some aspects of episode 8 that disappointed me last week, but episode 9, titled Fun and Games, more than made up for those feelings. It was one of the best pieces of television I've seen in a long, long time, maybe since Breaking Bad. It was the Ozymandias of Better Call Saul, the episode where Chuck's warning finally comes to pass and things fall apart. Comparing the quality of the two masterpiece episodes is a pointless enterprise. They conclude two very different stories, but they both act as thematic conclusions to years of storytelling. Of course, Breaking Bad didn't end with Ozymandias, and Better Call Saul doesn't end with fun and games. Jimmy's story, Gene's story, can still communicate a lot. But if Gene was never introduced and the show ended with that, I wouldn't be too upset about it. So there is a lot to sift through in this episode, and I'm going to go character by character this time around because to understand the overarching themes of justice and grief, each character needs a detailed breakdown. So with that, let's talk about Gustavo Fring and his right-hand man, Mike Ehrmantraut. Even after killing Lalo Salamanca, Gus is not out of the woods. In fact, he's forced to go back into the lion's den, the place where his quest for revenge was conceived, Don Eladio's home. He parks his completely innocuous station wagon next to a line of hot rods and supercars, a classic example of what separates Gus from the others, and most notably, he ends up right next to the Ferrari that Lalo gifted to Eladio. Stephen Bauer has an excellent presence on screen. I wish Eladio would have gotten more screen time in season 6, but this is probably my favorite Eladio scene between both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. The entire scene is framed by this shot, and there is a lot you could take from it. Obviously, the topic of their conversation is the fate of a dead man, so the skull nods to that. But even taking a step back, all of the men attending this meeting will be dead in the not too distant future. So, although this meeting will end in a quasi reset for the cartel power structure, none of these men can escape their fate. More than anything, this conversation is a reminder of what drives Gus: revenge. This not so subtle visual motif says it all. When he looks at Hector, it's pure hatred. The speech Gus gives to Lalo is the true spirit behind his emotionless gaze, and I love the way they emphasize that here. And when Eladio looks at Gus, he recognizes it. Beautiful image, by the way. Eladio reacts rationally to the situation. He weighs the evidence and makes a decision that is most conducive to stability and profit. But he is under no illusions about how Gus feels about him. He knows that Gus will always despise him for having killed Max, but believes his power is enough to keep Gus's ambitions tempered while he takes advantage of his distribution genius. Eladio's mistake is not recognizing that Gus's desire for revenge is all consuming. This image right here is more evidence to that. Gus is willing to risk everything he's built to get revenge. The greedy Eladio, whose life is solely about making money and enjoying a luxurious life, can't wrap his mind around this. The scenes that follow are very interesting. Gus ends up the winner. He gets to open his curtains once again. He doesn't have to be in a state of constant anxiety, but he doesn't enjoy it for even a moment. He wastes no time telling Mike to get back to the lab's construction, since that is the key part of his grand scheme, and even Mike has to look at him like, you really can't rest for a single day? The wine tasting scene is a continuation of this character trait. He goes out to relax alone, he doesn't have any close relationships, and when he gets into a conversation with this old friend of his, it's so strange to observe. We never see Gus just shoot the breeze with people. Every conversation he has seems to serve some long term purpose. So when he's just talking with a friend, it doesn't look right. And more importantly for Gus, it doesn't feel right. His desire for revenge has smothered any possibility for healing. He can't enjoy the wealth he has acquired, he can't enjoy one polite conversation. It's always back to work for Gus. So in the end, Hector ends Gus's life literally, but when he kills Max, he ends any possibility Gus has for happiness. And that is what tortures Gus into becoming a man who's willing to kill an infant to achieve his aim. Mike is not as far gone as his boss. Gus probably would use the word revenge for what he wants to happen with the Salamancas, but Mike uses a different word: justice. It's a word he's much more comfortable with given his law enforcement background. Mike's arc this season, and I detail this in my episode 2 analysis, is centered around his clouded identity. He works for Gus Fring, a drug dealer who has had men like Werner Ziegler killed, and he must do what Gus says or he's in serious trouble, as we have seen. But Mike still wants to be different from men like Tyrus and Victor. He doesn't want to be just another lackey dressed in black who has no say in how violent operations are handled. That is what meeting Nacho's father is all about. None of Gus's men feel the need to give the man closure, but Mike does. This visit is instigated by looking at one of his granddaughter's toys. It sort of acts as a moral condemnation, because Mike knows he would never be able to sleep if she disappeared and never got closure, so he goes out to visit Mr. Varga. And the look on the man's face, by the way, tragic. Mike does the right thing and tells the truth, but the retort is devastating. Mr. Varga tells Mike that this brand of justice he describes is an illusion that just leads to a never ending cycle. We've talked about how this plays out in Gus's life, but look at Kim and Jimmy too. Jimmy takes revenge on Chuck because he believes it's just. That ends in disaster. Kim's pursuit of outlaw justice in season 5 and 6 has a similar terrible outcome. This desire for revenge is a cage. That's what I think this shot is all about. Nacho's father accepts that revenge will not bring back his son, and that's all he wants. He doesn't become obsessed with seeing the Salamancas fall, he doesn't care. And his ability to drop the matter and move on allows him to be free, not chained to the fate of other men. And his final words to Mike are devastating. He says, "You gangsters and your justice, you're all the same. You're all the same." Those are the dreaded words Mike has attempted to avoid. We get one more big shadow of Mike in episode 9 after he meets Gus. Unlike the shadow designed in episode 2 when he stands up to Gus, it's not contrasted by his actual body because when Breaking Bad begins, he's all shadow, just another obedient servant to Gus. Gus and Mike were wrapped up very well, but the true greatness of Fun and Games is a product of Jimmy and Kim. Their storyline kicks off in a way that myself and many others predicted. We watch the couple go about their day after the life-altering events of the night prior, and it's intercut with Mike and his team cleaning up the bloody murder inside their apartment, which is genius. A little gross, I'm probably not going to be drinking coffee tomorrow, but still genius. And there's one moment in the montage that stood out to me. The moment when Jimmy throws a neck brace around one of his clients. He does this presumably to score pity points with the jury, but it does go back to the idea of healing. The client doesn't look comfortable putting the brace on, but Jimmy throws it on nonetheless. And he tries to force some artificial contrived healing process on Kim as well to keep her around, and fails. Mike and his army of men wipe away any trace of Howard completely, but the memory keeps what happened alive. Howard might as well still be laying there. Jimmy knows Kim can't take it, so he takes her to a hotel, and in their hotel room, we find something absolutely amazing. The painting on the wall is a direct connection to Walter White's story. I actually made a video on this Breaking Bad symbol, it seems like 1,000 centuries ago, but you can still check that out. I smiled ear to ear when I saw the painting, but after 2 seconds I realized that it meant Kim and Jimmy were headed for separation. For Walter White, the painting was about choosing a life that could not coexist with his family. He sails away from them so he can live a life of adventure and danger. The meaning is different for Jimmy and Kim. Kim decides to sail away from Jimmy because their life of danger and adventure is wreaking havoc on those around them. It's a moral decision and one that Walter can never quite bring himself to make when bodies start to stack up. More than anything in season 6, I wanted to see thematic links between the two stories. So to have that painting show up and have it be the symbol that reveals the impending tragedy, I loved it. Favorite moment of the season for me. The wake scene is brutal in more than a few ways. Jimmy and Kim really have to confront the humanity of the man they got killed with the pictures and the reminiscing. They can't deconstruct him down to just a greedy lawyer at this setting to make themselves feel better, because that is not who he was. The fall of HHM was a possibility I didn't consider, but there could be no better result for Jimmy's actions. It was a law firm he despised after being turned away by Howard, in reality Chuck. It was the cathedral of his brother's glory, so it's fitting that this period of his life ends with him bringing it down. Chuck's name and legacy will now fade into irrelevance. The lies Jimmy and Kim tell to Shell are some of the most venomous of the entire series. Kim's lie in particular was brutal. It's unbelievably cruel because she's going to blame herself for what happened to Howard. She's going to think every single day, what could have I done? What could have I said? They force her to bear the guilt that she should be free from. And I do want to ask you guys, when Jimmy tells Cheryl that he was jealous of the respect Howard got from Chuck, is this an honest admission? Or is it a lie to wiggle free from the awkward conversation? I tend to think he is telling the truth, although he's using the truth to hide the larger lie, if that makes sense. I'd be curious to read other ideas on that score. After the murder and postmortem slander of Howard, Kim's moral view of herself collapses. I think she quits law and pro bono work because she doesn't believe she's worthy enough for the task. She didn't work for money. She worked to help disadvantaged people and feel good about herself in the process. But when she turns her car around and sells her commendable mission down the river for a con that ends in the death of an innocent man, there's no coming back from that. Jimmy can sense what's coming. The announcement of "let the healing begin" comes off as overcompensation. He knows that a long term organic healing process is not possible, so he tries to drive the process himself by declaring the markers. But there is no rolling this thing back. When Jimmy pleads with Kim to stay, there are reflections of when Walter returns home after Hank's death and tries to get his family to pack up and leave. He thinks he can somehow forge another move and keep his life afloat, but what's broken is broken, and the pieces can't be put back together. That is the same dynamic with Kim and Jimmy. Jimmy even says that he'll change into whatever she wants him to be, but he won't get the chance to change. And with Kim out of the picture, Jimmy finally decides to take Chuck's advice.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. You can't help it. So stop apologizing and accept it. Embrace it. Frankly, I'd have more respect for you if you did.
The jump to the Breaking Bad era is extremely quick, but when Kim walks out the door, there really isn't anything left to see. When Chuck dies, Jimmy loses his ideal. He has nobody to imitate. And with Kim leaves the only reason Jimmy had for not becoming the person Chuck expected him to be, a destructive, arrogant schemer. In Breaking Bad, there is no single moment where you can say, this is where Walt crosses the point of no return. But that is not the case here. The transition from Jimmy to Saul is clear and defined. The life that Jimmy forges after Kim is luxurious but soulless. It's an oversaturated, aimless mess. And this painting right here, Minerva and the Triumph of Jupiter, is a unique inclusion. The camera goes in close on the face of this character, Ganymede, Zeus's cupbearer who was plucked from his meager life as a sheep herder and brought to Mount Olympus. Perhaps this is meant to be compared to Jimmy's move from his apartment with Kim to his extravagant mansion. From his mansion, we track Saul to his office, now overseen by the Lady Liberty float that the Kettlemans use to promote their fraudulent tax business. Saul uses it to promote his fraudulent law firm, and it is the perfect symbol for the brand of justice Saul pursues during Breaking Bad. The episode ends with Saul delivering the line, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall." This seems to hint towards the appearance of Walter White, since he is the force that shakes the entire system and eventually brings it to the ground. I expect we'll see Walter next week along with Jesse. I'm a little nervous for how the two will look. I wasn't a huge fan of the bald cap in El Camino, but we'll see. The voice alone will be cool to have back. Again, Fun and Games was a masterpiece. It fulfilled many of my hopes for Season 6. Kim finding her conscience and coming clean to Jimmy about their relationship was perfect. I thought it was the right direction for her character. And this will not be the last time we see Kim Wexler. She will be back. She's from Nebraska. Gene lives in Nebraska. We know it's coming. But I have full faith in the writing room's ability to make the inevitable reunion special. Alright guys, if you have any thoughts on Fun and Games, feel free to start a discussion in the comments. Do you think it was the best episode of the series? For me it was, but I'm sure others will feel differently. It felt like a series finale, but we have 4 episodes left, so if you want to see videos like this for the remaining episodes, make sure to subscribe on your way out. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I will talk to you soon.